Hello and welcome to a new episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström.
And my name is Malena Hjerpe.
And today we're going to talk about a topic that is very necessary if you're running a sewing business, but it's definitely not uncomplicated. And that particular topic is marketing. How do we get our name out there? How do we get more people to know about the things we do, the things we sell? Are there some ways that we find more effective? Are there some type of marketing methods that we are a little bit uncomfortable with? I thought it would be really interesting to address this because that's definitely, I think, every business owner struggles with this, how to do good marketing. So, Malena, what kind of marketing do you rely on to get your brand out there?
So far, I've only relied, I would say, on Instagram, which is, I think, a little bit risky. First of all, to be only in one place. I have a Facebook group as well, but I haven't been active there at all. And to rely on just one source of communication, and also the fact that I don't own Instagram. Like, Instagram can change from day to day. It could be down one day, and I don't know, change algorithm, as people have been talking a lot about lately. It feels very a not sure place to be honest, to only be there. So right now I'm trying to put my eggs in different baskets. I've started a Pinterest site as well. I'm just added like a couple of few pins, so it's really new there. I'm going to start up Facebook group again. I think I don't really like working on Facebook, and now I have a newsletter and a website as well. So I'm trying to I'm trying to be on different channels now. But so far it has been mainly Instagram. How about you?
I use more different kind of channels, I think. I also use Instagram as one tool. I wouldn't say that I'm super active there. I would say if you want to succeed on Instagram, you probably have to post some type of content almost every day. Stories, reels, feed content, doing live streams. It's a lot. It's a big beast to feed, I think, in order to be really, really successful on that channel. So I'm there definitely, but perhaps not as much as I should be. But I also have help now. Managing my Instagram account because I do feel a bit overwhelmed with Instagram. And then I have Facebook, because I wanted to ask you said a Facebook group, but you have a Facebook page as well, right, Malena, where you have your brand and you can post updates.
Yeah, with group I mean page, or
yeah.
This is why I don't really like Facebook, because I'm not really sure about it.
Yeah, because most sewing businesses both have a page where they share news, like a regular news feed, as you would do as your personal page. And then a lot of businesses in the sewing space also have groups, maybe, perhaps for users of their patterns. And I have a page where I post links to all my blog posts that people might find helpful, and other news and updates. And then I also have a Facebook group which is about sewing activewear, which I started a long time ago. And then I use Pinterest as well, where I share all my tutorials, and I also use emails, newsletter marketing, sending emails. So that's probably all I do. I don't really do ads. I know more and more people are doing that, so that's something I will definitely am open to try. I think for me, marketing is probably my weakest spot. I think I would say that if I had done a better job with marketing and had been more comfortable with marketing, I think I would have been much more successful, honestly, than I have been, because it's something that I'm quite uncomfortable with. But I know, Malena, that you forgot to mention one thing, is that you also sometimes share news in other sewing groups, right, that are open for marketing, I think on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I've shared, for example, now that I got my newsletters with a free pattern, I shared it in a Facebook group that is, it was a Swedish group that is specifically only for like free pattern, that you can recommend free patterns. And that was really, I mean, successful, to be honest. Like I got a lot of a lot more subscribers from there. So it was really, it's good to try different things, I think. And I got a lot of positive feedback as well from that post. And I mean, it didn't went viral or anything, but you know, it's nice that people are appreciative of when you give up a freebie or something.
Yeah, and that's also a group, right? Because that you're able to share that stuff, because there's usually, with a lot of Facebook groups, there is user agreements that on some you are not able to post any promotional content, and some groups are open to post certain promotional content if it fits some standards, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this group was actually very strict about that it can only be free patterns that you talk about. I actually I got a comment about the sizing, and I recommended another company that has a more a wider spread of sizes compared to me, and that post was actually removed because I could not recommend something that cost money. So it was a little bit funny. I was trying to do her a favor and recommend her a pattern that had really great sizes, but yeah, that was removed because it wasn't free. But I mean, that's the rule they have, and then you just have to accept it, of course.
Yeah, because I guess if you don't reinforce those rules, it can go like the wild, wild west, I suspect, pretty quickly. So you have to be really a stickler for that kind of stuff. I don't, because I have a Facebook group myself, it's that kind of stuff can be a bit overwhelming. Also, you have to have like really on your feet as a moderator. I thought it would be interesting to do a little bit of a deep dive in the different type of channels, because Malena, you said that Instagram has been your primarily marketing vehicle for Hazelhen Patterns, right? So how do you use Instagram?
I don't have a good... I know that everyone always says that you have to be consistent, post like on a regular basis, maybe not every day, but like every other day, like you have to be consistent. And I'm really bad with that because I don't take photos that much, and I don't, maybe if I'm working just on a pattern, I mean, it's not that photogenic, so to speak, when I just sit with my computer and work. And so I struggle to really have pictures to share. So that's my biggest struggle. And then when I do get some pictures, it feels like Instagram for me is like sometimes, some weeks I'm quite active, and some weeks then I barely post anything. So I'm not, I know that I'm not working in a good way with this, and I really have to, is this taking pictures that I need to improve on, so I actually have something to post, or be more creative of, well, what can I post and what can I talk about? But it's always a struggle because, well, I'm a pattern maker. That's my job. I want to focus on the job. So being on Instagram and posting like it just doesn't feel so work related. But again, like if you don't talk about your work, then how will people find you? So I know like this is something that I have to focus on, but I struggle with it really bad, to be honest.
Yeah, I can very much relate to what you're saying. It's also such a mindset shift, because we are doing, I think in today's society we talk a lot about task switching, that if you do too many task switching during workday, it can aggravate stress, and you will have a more difficult going back to the initial thing that you were doing. So for our like brains, and to have like a balanced workload, is usually better to just focus on one thing, and when you're done with that, then you focus on another thing. And when it comes to social media and taking people behind the scenes, I think that's important to understand that when you are in a process of doing something, you usually get quite immersed in that process. So for instance, if you are sewing samples or developing a pattern or whatever you're doing, it's a mental switch that doesn't always come natural, and it can also cause some stress. So for instance, for me, if I do a lot of sewing projects, I definitely try to take my followers behind the scenes and share some tips. But that also is, it's easy to forget because I also get wrapped up in the process of sewing. So, and sometimes it's not the best for my mental capacity to stop, take photos and think of it is in terms of, is this good content? So it's not as easy, because some people say, oh, but just share more behind the scenes stuff. Absolutely. But it also means that you have to switch back and forth between different type of tasks.
Yeah, and I also want to, if you post a picture, even if it's behind the scene and you want to show a candid reality, like this is how it is, I mean, you still want the picture to be looking nice, like have good quality, have proper lighting, so at least it's somewhat nice light settings. And then you have to, clean away the mess and maybe put some makeup on. You want still want the picture to look nice. And I'm a messy sewer, to be honest. My workroom is always looking a mess. So it's not so if I'm gonna take a picture, then I first have to clean away everything. And it just becomes, it just takes so long time then. And if I just want to show a quick sample, then I much rather do that. But then when I do come to okay, now I need to take pictures, then I do that. I clean away, I make proper lighting, and then I don't sew for the sake of sewing or for to get maybe the sample. I do it to take the pictures. I usually combine this with a photo sample, and then it's also a little bit fun to see the process of the sample getting made, and then you actually see it on a live model as well. So then I solely focus on taking pictures for that sample then.
Yeah, I can very much understand that. That means also you can do one thing at a time instead of having to do a lot of different things. And I know everyone will listen now will say, but yeah, we want to see the messy behind the scenes, but spoiler alert, you don't want that, because honestly, social media is a heightened reality. And I don't care what anyone says. And trust me, I work professionally in this. You always have to have an angle or a storytelling thing. I'm not saying you have to have a pristine room, but everything you do tells a story, and it should be visually enticing. So when people show their messy sewing spaces, they have a purpose with that, because they want to show that they have a messy space. And so every post that you do has some kind of thought behind it. So I just want to say that, for full transparency, because you can never unthink that thing that you are telling a story. So when you're doing content like we do, you're always conscious about the story you're telling, which definitely help. And also because you look at all the other influencers and you see how everything has gotten so much more visually appealing compared to Instagram, say 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the bar has been raised. So it's very difficult, I think, Malena, right, to unsee the fact that, a lot of people are doing very visually compelling material, and a lot of those are also quite successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't mind sharing, if I share a story, then I don't mind so much about how it looks with the lighting and everything, because that's more quick show of what you're doing. That for me is a little more behind the scene. But and they disappear after one day. But if I'm gonna add a picture, at least the first one that you then will see in the feed if you scroll down, I want that to be a nice aesthetically good-looking picture. Then when you swipe the picture and you see all the other ones, then it's okay, then maybe the bar can be lower. But on the first picture, because it will end up in my feed, and I always, when I look at other people's Instagram, I always scroll on and just to look at their feed and to see, like, is this something I want to follow or not? So then I just assume that people will do the same thing about my feed. And then I want the feed to look, I mean, I want it to have a certain bar. I have a quite low bar, to be honest, but like still it can't go below that. It still should be like, you know, aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I think it's really interesting to talk about, because I'm sure a lot of people who are listening who is not perhaps doing this professionally would say, but we love to see the messy behind the scenes. But, you know, it's difficult because we are building a brand. And as Malena says, the feed is, of course, just one part of the Instagram puzzle, but it's probably the one that will decide if you're going to follow me or not. So your feed has to look quite visually compelling. It doesn't have to be like perfect or anything, but it definitely have to feel that like there's a strong visual aspect to it, because that's what you kind of want to follow. If you go into and see all the photos and they don't speak to you because you can't see, because maybe the light is off or too yellow or too dark, and because you want to go on these platforms to get inspired. So you have to, we have to reach a certain level. That's just a fact. And from my understanding is that, because stories has always been like the behind the scenes stuff, right? And reels could be the same thing, very informal. But my feeling is that the bar gets raised in every different type of medium on Instagram. So I would make the argue that stories aren't always as spontaneous, and, you know, they're also telling a story in a way. So I think we start to what's the word here? We start to check ourselves. We get too self-conscious, so it almost gets difficult to post on any type of media on Instagram, because the bar gets raised all the time. So you start over-analyzing everything, I think.
Yeah, and a good thing to remember also is that, I mean, we don't represent, this is not my personal Instagram account. This is my business account. This is a business that I run. This is what I want my business to portray, that I want my customers to see. So it's not, I can be personal on my account, but it's not about me. It's about the business, you know. And then, I mean, wishful thinking, like in the future, maybe I want to hire people. Maybe we could be a whole team behind it. So it's not just about me. It's about the company I want to, like, how should that be portrayed on Instagram? Yeah, that's definitely, because you definitely want to find that nice balance that if you go to our Instagram accounts, we want you to get a feel of who we are, but also, of course, what our brand stands for. So I totally agree with you. It's a little bit different from us, you know, as we don't just post our makes. We are also, as Malena says, you know, making sure that we are like in line with the brand and the visuals and everything that we want to portray from our brand. So yeah, no wonder why we don't post more on Instagram, right, Malena? Because yeah, I think the first person I would hire in my team would be someone who works with marketing.
Yeah, so now you have I think it was really good to talk about, because maybe, you know, we were both thinking, oh, it's so diff, why we post more, but now you know, understand why. It's just,
yeah, it is a specific work role, marketing. So yeah, and I'm not comfortable, like, that's not my second nature, absolutely not. So if my company would expand, that would be my second person.
Yeah, and I think some of the bigger brands definitely have that. And as I said, I also now have on a consultant basis a person who's helping with Instagram as well, because it's just too much for me to. I think.
Tell us more about that. How is that working? How is the setup?
Yes, the setup is like this, because I basically only run my feed now, which I don't post that much, but I do that, and then I have Jacqueline from Jaykaiy Patterns, right? If I pronounce this right, I should definitely drop a link. You should check out. She makes wonderful sewing patterns for children as well. So there will be a link in the show notes of this podcast. And she helps me with reposting things to my stories, and maybe highlighting things, because I have so much content that I've created over the years, and I keep forgetting that I can repurpose a lot of that. So she helps me because she has a fresh eye, just like you say, Malena. She can watch my content and also keep track of people that have made something of my sewing patterns or have bought my book, and do reposts and stuff like that, because that's the kind of thing that I struggle with. I think I would be good at it if that was my only job, because I do understand marketing, and I do that professionally from time to time. But for me, I cannot be all those people anymore. I can't be the social media manager and trying to run a business in all other aspects as well, and do that well. I just shut off. So and she also keeps tab on my DMs and stuff like that. So that's been extremely helpful. So I'm very hands off in that area, and I find that has made me a much more relaxed. So I can just focus on producing, a bit more like new content. That's more my thing, basically. So on the feeds, and I do occasionally do reels, but I always set the bar too high on that, because I just want to make sure the reels are like really well edited and are helpful content. I don't do like jokey reels, for instance, because I'm a pretty like if you know me as personally, you would. I mean, I'm very like easygoing, and I love to laugh and everything like that. But I struggle doing that kind of like meme reels about sewing. That's not my. I feel much more comfortable in sharing, valuable content in a like easy to understand format. That's more my comfort zone. But then I realized that a lot of the more successful reels are basically just like extended memes. So, like, can you relate? Blah blah blah, so that's I haven't really made that transition into reels. So I would love to hear you are listening or watching this on YouTube. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. How do you feel about that? Because it's I can understand that, because it's like light entertainment, and we just want to have a laugh. But for me, I struggle with that in my business. So
that's like difficult to know, like for yourself as well, maybe that is this just out of my comfort zone, and I should just leave my comfort zone because everybody tells me that success is when you leave your comfort zone, or is that within like, this is how I want my business to be like, and I don't want to be like that. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to know which one is it actually.
I think it's probably a combination of both, definitely. And that's also something, you bring up a really good point, because that's probably something that we both struggle a little bit. There's a mental aspect to marketing as well, because you're putting yourself out there. You're not representing anyone else but yourself and your brand. So could you give me some examples, Malena? Where are you like uncomfortable when it comes to marketing?
Well, I'm super comfortable filming myself, taking videos. I've tried now to do it a couple of times and just add it as a story, because that I feel more comfortable, because it will disappear after one day. But yeah, filming, I think, I know that videos are like a really good thing to focus on Instagram, but I find that's so uncomfortable for me to do. So yeah, that's my biggest like. And also we have in Sweden, or I think in maybe all the Nordic country, something called jantelagen, which basically is that you shouldn't like take too much space, you shouldn't stick out too much, you should just be like everybody else, like tone it down a little bit, which is like the opposite of marketing, because then you really have to put yourself out there. So it's a constant battle with this jantelagen that you should you should promote yourself when you're doing marketing, obviously, but you can't do that according to the jantelagen, and it's just like a social, how do you say, not social rule, but a little bit like you don't brag, for example, like that's a bad thing. which is stupid. I think you should be able to say that you are proud of something that you have done and show it to the world. And of course, as a business, you have to do marketing. That's how people will notice you.
Yeah, you have to be put yourself out there and be proud, because it's definitely something, Malena, I can very much relate to this. I think I heard that in Australia they have the tall poppy syndrome, which is the same thing basically. You shouldn't be the tallest poppy on the field. So maybe if you come from another country, you probably have other similar sayings. So please comment if you have those kind of sayings in other countries as well. But yeah, it's a Norwegian terms from the beginning, and it kind of have spread through all through the Nordic countries, I think. So that's definitely something that we don't know how to brag, because that's a very unattractive trait. So because we frame it as bragging instead of just saying, that we are proud and we want to share something that we find that others might find helpful, because that's obviously what we're doing, right? We're trying to show people something that they could find useful, but we feel like we are like not very like nice people because we talk about our own stuff instead of talking about other things. So yeah, I think we both struggle with this a lot, the mental aspect of it. I think I am super uncomfortable with most type of marketing strategies that are good, that are effective. So because
which part do you think is the worst? Is it putting yourself out there, or like, because you have done a lot of videos, for example, so you are more comfortable with creating videos, I guess, or?
Yep, I definitely, I feel pretty relaxed in front of the camera, and that has never really been an issue for me. Of course, I was like stiffer in the beginning, but I've done like amateur theater, and I've done a lot of presentations, so I don't get that much jitters. So I don't mind talking about stuff that I think that other people will find useful. So that's how I feel comfortable about marketing. I can do a video because I have some really great tips about how to use a twin needle on your sewing machine, for instance. So I always that's how I, in marketing terms, what I am good at is content marketing, because that's my comfort zone. That's where I am sharing valuable information, but also, of course, simultaneously marketing my books or my courses or my sewing patterns. But where I am comfortable is reaching out to other people and asking for help, or sharing stuff, because I think your network is probably the most important things. And I think that for instance, in if we're talking about our specific sewing industry, community marketing is huge, right? So when you are launching a new pattern, you usually have pattern testers, and you might also have, on top of that, you reach out to bigger sewing influencers, so to speak, and maybe in exchange for a free pattern, free fabric, not just testing the pattern, but also like producing high quality photos. And they of course you will reach outside your own audience. And I think that's probably one of the most effective marketing strategy, and something that I can never see myself doing. So yeah, that's my uncomfort zone.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. It would be like I would be happy to do that kind of collaboration if somebody would ask me. But for me to reach out and ask them, yeah, that's I totally understand you on that one, and that's why I think like testing the pattern, it's one thing, because then you say it, you ask people to reach out, to me, contact me if you want to be part of the testing group. And so many people do that, and which is so, I appreciate it so much, it's so helpful. But I never have any expectations of my models, my testers, to also deliver like really high quality photos or something. Some of them do, which I'm super grateful of course, but it's not something that, and you also have to do this, like, no, you test the pattern, that's what I want from you. But how do you do that? Do you work with a testing group or?
No, I don't anymore, because I used for my first sewing pattern, and I think testing groups are extremely valuable, but it kind of ties into a little bit of the uncomfortable thing for me, because it's definitely I don't feel comfortable asking people for essentially free or very lowly reimbursed work. And I know for a couple of years ago there was a big discussion about that as well, and I know that some pattern brands are now paying their testers, which I think is a very good initiative, but because we all have our different budget restrictions, so I don't do that anymore. So what I'm doing now is that I'm sewing samples in a couple of different sizes and have them tested on different bodies, and that has been very helpful to me. It has worked really well for me, and so that means that I don't have to be uncomfortable about doing that. I know that this is standard practice and everyone is super happy about getting a pattern and maybe some free fabric or gift card or whatever, so I totally understand it and I know it's standard practice, but again I feel uncomfortable about that stuff too, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's not something that like sits right with you, I mean, then it's not about comfort zone anymore. Then it's like, no, this goes against how I want to work, and then you should obviously not do it, because it's not gonna sit right with you, and you're gonna have a bad feeling about it then. So yeah, no, then you should really listen to like what makes me uncomfortable or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just that I know that it would be, from a marketing perspective, a much better thing. But yeah, you have to have your own like value system when you're running a business, and I know a lot of people will say that mine is like not. I'm exaggerating, but yeah. And I also want to address something for context here. Is I don't know how it's in other countries. We are based in Sweden, but every time that one give someone a product, say a piece of fabric or a sewing pattern for free, that is like income. So if I'm sending someone a stash of fabric or a sewing pattern to do a test samples with the expectations of posting it on Instagram, that is basically me paying them in fabric, and that means that the receiver of the fabric has to pay tax on the fabric. So, and it's hard to pay. You don't. How do you pay tax on fabric? Yeah, you have to pay it with your own money. So, for instance, if I would send someone fabrics and patterns to do like promotion for the value of say $20, then you have to pay like the tax on that $20. So maybe, I don't know, it's 10% or whatever. But that's a couple of dollars that you have to like, and you have to do that when you're doing your income declaration every year, your yearly like
yeah, and tax, it's not you Johanna, no, who has to do it. It's actually the receiver, the customer, who has to do that.
So I'm putting a lot of other people in tricky spots, and this has been like a huge thing in Sweden, where they've done like the tax authorities has done like big like they've gone after the bigger influencers because they do receive a lot of products with and even if you don't even share it, you're supposed to pay tax on it, and otherwise you have to return it with your own money for shipping. So it's a very difficult rule to follow, but I just want to say that for context. So that's why the reason why I am personally extra uncomfortable about this. We have all done it, so it's not that. I mean, it's hard to follow the rules because sometimes you don't know it, but that is the government has now very clearly stated that this is what is the rule here in Sweden. So and maybe it's this. I wouldn't be surprised if many other countries have this too, but probably not everyone is aware of it.
Yeah, and then there is the marketing rule as well, because then if somebody have received something and are then posting about it on Instagram, like how should they mark the Instagram post? Should they like advertisement, or like they have to mark mark the post as well, I think.
Yes.
So it's very clear that this is like a collaboration, a paid collaboration, or paid advertisement or something, because otherwise that person is also breaking the rule. And then, I totally understand that. Then we put that person in a very tricky position, and obviously we don't want to do that. So it's a little bit difficult to work with when it also is like it's not that expensive things that we have, so it's like really small amount of money it actually is about. But if you want to do the right thing, then it's a lot of paperwork basically to be able to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's very, very, very tricky. I mean, for Instagram now, you can pick the like sponsored by or collaboration, so there will be an automatic tag, but you have to be very clear with, this is a paid advertising, so the caption should lead with this. It's paid. I think in Sweden, having just hashtag ad might not be enough. It's very, So we are, as Malena says, we're not just causing a lot of. It's not just us. It's even perhaps more tricky for the people that we want to collaborate with, because you are the ones are those are the ones that might get into trouble because they haven't properly labeled the collaboration, or they haven't paid tax on the goods that we have sent them. So it's and I mean, if we were a big corporation, of course we would have that would be like. Just a part of the marketing budget, but it's very hard and to expect that also from people that maybe don't do this professional as influencers, but just happy to sew to get some free fabric or a sewing pattern.
Yeah, no, it's a really tricky subject, and like how to navigate it in a proper way. That's why it's easiest to sew and take photos yourself and to add those pictures, but then then there are quite few posts, to be honest.
It's definitely that's why we do it, but I think if we had gone outside that little box as we are talking right now, because I would say that a lot of the more successful brands has done a great job with the community thing and created that, but it's perhaps not for everyone, because it isn't as simple as it might sound though. So
but you mentioned before that the blog is your safe space. How would you say that differs from, for example, Instagram according to you? Like, how do you work with it?
One of my struggles with Instagram is the format, because it is very limited. It's very fleeting. It's a very fleeting type of content. So I always have to keep feeding the beast. It disappears quickly. I mean, regardless if you're posting a story which physically sort of literally disappears after 24 hours, or something to your feed. If people don't see it right now, it's probably gone forever, etc., etc. And I feel very much like Instagram is kind of dictating what type of content I have to post there. Whereas on my blog, I feel I am in charge of the type of content I can produce. So I feel much more freer in the format there. I can be more long-winded, and I can do what I do best, which I think is teaching. And also I feel, because I rely a lot on search and SEO and search engine optimization. So a lot of my best performing blog posts are ones that I did maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they keep delivering this, new visitors. And some of these people will enjoy the stuff I do, and they want to participate in more things, so maybe buy something from me, download a freebie or whatever. So that's how I feel like that's my own ecosystem. I don't feel in the hands of a big corporation that can change the algorithms or the rules. So for me, I also find this much more creative. So unlike a lot of other people in the sewing space, I have not stopped blogging. In fact, I blogged quite a lot this last couple of months, I've posted maybe 5 or 6 blog posts, which I think is a lot. I mean, I should say once there was a time when I posted 2 to 3 times a week, but I don't do that anymore. But yeah, I really, really enjoy the long format. Like really, like I can spend like a day on doing a blog tutorial, and I always feel so much more satisfied with that than any post I've done on Instagram ever, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's and it sounds so good, because then that post or blog post will live on forever, and you own it. It won't disappear unless you want it to, like, okay, now I'm gonna shut my page down or something. But like, you have that power. While on Instagram, it's a post will disappear if you just scroll by it, or you don't have control over Instagram. So I think it's such a smart thing to have a blog, to have your own place where you own everything. And that is a little bit I want to work like that as well in the future. I want to be more active on the blog. The thing that I've struggled with earlier with my blog was that should I write in Swedish or in English or both? So before I did both, but it was, again, WordPress. I don't know how it works. Like, I can't figure that one out. And we had just a really problem with making the website, so you will be able to switch your language. And also to write something, for me it takes quite a long time to write something, and then I have to rewrite it in another language. So that became just like no, I don't want to do it. So now I come to the term that, okay, if I'm going to continue with blogging, then I'll do it only in English, because then I know that it will be it will be so much easier to just write that one post and then publish it than to make 2 posts and to have your website so you can switch language. So I'm like, okay, I'm working on being okay with only having it in English. I still want my patterns to be both in Swedish and in English, but on the website, Instagram and blog post, I'm gonna settle with just English, and I'm working on accepting it.
Yeah.
Do you always have written just in English, like from the get-go, or did you write in Swedish as well?
Never occurred to me whatsoever. And I should give you the backstory why, because I started like participating in different like sewing online like forums and the blogs and different stuff. I think it's about 20 years ago, and the backstory is that in Sweden back then there were no like strong communities for sewing grown-up clothes. There were, and I'm going to simplify this, but I would say 95% of people that were doing sewing content in Sweden were doing children's clothes in like stretchy fabrics, knit fabrics. So that was like a lot of entry drug, so to speak, to sewing grown-up clothes. So and I've never sewn children's clothes much, even though I have kids myself. I'm mostly focused on myself. But so I never felt that I had like a natural community or audience for my stuff in Sweden, because my feeling at the time when I went online and checked Swedish blogs was the fact that there were no other like people, there weren't much people interested in sewing grown-up clothes, I would say. I know I'm going to simplify this, but if you're Swedish, I think you will agree with me, because that was definitely the trend 20 years ago.
But sewing at all 20 years ago, it wasn't a cool thing, right?
No. I think
not
a
like
lot
it
of
is
other
today.
No. I think in Sweden we were pretty slow on getting on the sewing hype. I think knitting has always been like the strong suit in the Nordic countries, and I think Denmark was a little bit more proactive, and Finland as well, because there were also pattern magazines, for instance, published both in Finland and in Denmark, but in Sweden nothing. So even though we're the largest country, I think we were definitely the slowest to get on that like revival of garment sewing. So yeah, I agree. It was definitely not. It took a long time, and I think we were very much influenced by what was going on in other larger countries, and in the pattern revolution and everything like that. I think that's where we caught on, basically. So that's a long story of me saying, because I was always connected from day one with people in other countries. I never had like that many Swedish sewing friends, so I always found my community in other countries. So that's why it never occurred to me that I would write in Swedish. But of course that shows. I mean, I would say that my English has improved since then. But yeah, probably my first blog posts they aren't like amazing in English. So it's been a learning process for sure. I don't go back and read them, but yeah. It has been like hopefully a progression.
And how did you start? Was it the blog that you started like first? And did you have already like, I'm gonna start a business with this, or was it just sharing your sewing?
Yeah, I started on sewing communities, mostly Pattern Review, which is a large sewing community that's still active, that was founded in the US. And also there was a big sewing community on Flickr, which was a photo hosting website. And then around 2005, people started blogging, and I thought about it for a little bit, but I only jumped on the train in 2008. And I definitely already back then had ideas how to start a business. So yeah, it was definitely something I wasn't sure which type of angle, but I know I wanted to do something that was related to sewing, and that would be my like home space, my blog.
Oh, that's so cool, because it's interesting to hear how people both start with blog or social media, but also like the sewing journey to like actively start to sew, not just because you need to fix a garment or something, but you actually sew garments for yourself. It's interesting to hear the origin story.
Yeah, and it's been really fascinating to talk about the evolution of the home sewing community, because it's been such a fantastic thing that has happened in the last couple of decades. So it's been like a massive, and of course it changed platforms as we're talking about now, because you can't, just because you started on one platform and you like that one, you have to adapt. So back then there was a huge it was pretty big international sewing blog community, and on platforms such as Blogger and WordPress and some other platforms, it was a big community. And slowly but surely less and less people were updating their blogs, and then they moved either to Facebook and I would say primarily to Instagram. So there has been a huge shift where you share your makes and your tips and your experience. It's happened a lot in the last couple of decades.
Yeah, and I feel that since I've been working with this, been like employed pattern maker for a company, I didn't sew anything for myself during that time. So when I started to studying it, I would say that then I lost it as a hobby. So for me, like, I knew home sewing from Burda, the magazine Burda. Like that was the only place that I sourced patterns. So I had no idea about the whole home sewing community and like how big it actually was. And it was just like when I started my own business 5 years ago, then I wanted to have something to sell myself as well. And my sister's like, oh yeah, but there's a thing called PDF patterns. And then when you start to dig into that and research it, and was like, oh wow, a lot of things have happened since I left the home sewing world and worked with clothes, because then it was not a hobby for me anymore. So I'm amazed with how much that actually has happened these, last 5-10 years. It's amazing how the evolvement how much have evolved.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. It's funny because it's such a like low tech, old school craft, but it's all because of the digital revolution basically, or the expansions of both, how do we distribute patterns, and of course how do we meet up, how do we connect all over the world. Like people, they have sewing friends all over the world, so it's a very like tight knit community in a way, even though it's global. So it still feels like a pretty like manageable. You can still like recognize certain people that keeps like showing up on different places. So it's been, and all that is due to the fact, both the digitalization and of course the internet. So that has been like absolutely game changing. I think the fact that this kind of coincided with the digital like expansion that we've gone through since the mid 90s.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think it's so sad when like craftsmanship gets lost because people don't do them anymore. And people want to work and do other things, and then they don't grow their own food, they don't make their own bread, they don't make their own clothes. But here we are actually taking back that craftsmanship again, and we learn it again, and maybe not like the proper tailoring way, but like, you can still make your own clothes. I think that is so cool. Really, yeah. I like it, and I hope it will continue to grow and not be just phase or a trend or anything. That it was actually like this is a good skill set to have. So I really, fingers crossed, it will only grow in the future as well.
Yeah, I hope so too. At least we have seen like like an increased interest in crafts, and that's would be really interesting to do an episode perhaps in the future, like predicting where will sewing go. Is it because we know that the pandemic was helpful for increasing the interest in a lot of crafts, including sewing. I think everyone pretty much saw an expansion in their business during the pandemics. I like, it sounds counterintuitive where a lot of other businesses were struggling, but I think sewing was one of the businesses that actually increased their revenue, I think, in many cases. So yeah, I definitely hope that it's here to stay. At least it's been like easier to preserve because we are also building the communal digital wealth of library all through all these platforms that we talked about today. So I definitely think that if you're starting out today and a little bit curious, it will be so much easier to get started and get a decent result, and then you will feel encouraged to keep on going. So I think that's one of the valuable things that is happening now, that we have like co-created this like massive library that is accessible for everyone. And I hope that is also a way of like making sure that this craft won't be lost, because there will always be resources that you can turn to and that can help you, even though perhaps your grandparents no longer know how to sew, for instance.
Yeah, and I when you speak of the future, I just want to like trajectory patterns. Have you thought about that?
No, I haven't, but I would love to talk about that in another episode, because again, that's definitely something. It's going to be really, really interesting to see. But my short answer, I do get questions about that sometimes. No, I haven't. But if I get enough, I might consider it. Enough request.
Yeah, because I'm, you always think like, what can I do next to reach more customers, to sell more patterns? And I was like, but how many people do actually have projectors when they make their clothes? And then I saw this group. 92,000 people was in that Facebook group. 92,000. Like, that's a lot of people. So obviously quite a lot of people use projectors when they make their clothes. My mind was blown. So now I'm thinking about it. I'm curious about it, because I'm always a late adopter when it comes to everything. Like, I'm the last one on every single thing. So I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be the absolute last one on this one. So I'm thinking about it. I haven't decided anything, but I'm curious.
I love to hear that. That means we also have a topic for a future episode. Now, just for content, I think you should start doing that so we can talk about it a bit more and share the journey and see how that will affect your brand reach and your sales. So I'm really curious. I am absolutely blown away by that number, 92,000 members. I had no idea. And also, of course, if you're listening or watching, please share your experience as well about this if you do this and the benefits you find. And also, I would love to know, is this a deal breaker if you're buying a pattern? If you have a projector, are you like, I'm not buying that sewing pattern because it doesn't come with a projector version? That's kind of stuff I'm really curious about. So definitely drop us a comment, and we will really have to keep that discussion going, because it's really, really fascinating to follow and see where we're heading in the future. I mean, we definitely have to adapt. We cannot sit here and refuse to like jump on new technology when it's necessary.
No, definitely we have to be assure with what's happening in the community, and see what you want, basically, what customers want.
Yeah, so maybe we should end with those words. I hope that you enjoyed this episode where we talk very openly about marketing, our thoughts about it, and of course some of the mental blocks that we have around marketing, and also perhaps you understand a little bit more how it's not just as straightforward as you might think when it comes to marketing. It's complicated, both from a legal and a mental angle.
Yeah, it is definitely. I think easiest that, like, I can easily say that it is the toughest part of having your own business, to put yourself out there and promote yourself. It's the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk to you soon. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I'm Malena Hjerpe.